To become a better writer and a better speaker in English, you need to read a lot in English. Reading is very important. When you read, you are acquiring new ideas, you're learning new things, but at the same time, you're doing this through the medium of the written word, which means you're also using the language. You're learning new words, you're learning new ways to combine these words, you're learning a new style. When you're obsessed with writing, with editing, you will see that as you read, you pay attention both to the ideas and to the ways they are phrased. When I was really focusing on improving my writing, I was almost editing subconsciously everything that I read, trying to improve that. And that's exactly where you want to reach. You want to reach a position where you're getting both the ideas and the language. And the key is that quantity matters, and quantity trumps quality. Every time people ask me, students ask me, what should I read? I give them a list of writers that I think are good, but I tell them if you don't have access to these books, just read any book. Read any book in English. Quantity really matters. It builds your language abilities, and it builds a reservoir of ideas, and very bad books sometimes have a lot of gold nuggets of ideas that you can definitely use. My name is Shai Dotan. I'm Associate Professor of International and Public Law at the University of Copenhagen Faculty of Law. This lecture is designed to help you read more, improve and increase the quantity of a reading that you're doing. This is part of a series of lectures designed to make you a better writer and a better speaker in English. How can you read more? I divide my answer to 3 parts. Availability. You want to have books that are available to you because this will increase the chances you will start reading. It's always the beginning that is the most important. That's why I always focus on getting you started. That's a crucial part. The second element that we will discuss is habits that allow you to continue with the reading and to actually have a longer reading session and read in a way that is effective and concentrated. And the third element would be motivation. Motivation that will keep you reading and keep you getting back to reading and keeping these good habits. So all these feed into each other and there's connection between them, and this is what we will focus on. The availability part is the easiest to explain. You want to always have a book that you're interested in next to you. If you're traveling, keep it in your bag. If you're at home or at the office, have it there. You want to have it close so that you can always take the book and read, even if it's for 10 minutes or 15 minutes or half an hour, it's always with you. Well, how do you reach this? This depends on the situation. If you are in an English-speaking country, the best way to always have books available is to go to a public library, because then you can get books that cost you practically nothing. The amount of books that you can read is much larger, and you have a very large variety. Now, I live in Denmark. If I go to a public library, most of the books were almost all of them, 99% are in Danish, and I assume a lot of multilinguals listen to me are in the same situation. So what can you do? One solution that we have today is to use the iPad or the Kindle. Here you will be able to have books that are affordable and that are easy to read. Not everybody likes to read from an iPad or from a Kindle. Sometimes you like to remember text in a particular position in a page, or you like the feeling of paper. So maybe that's not for you. But even if it's not your ideal way of reading, I recommend that you sometimes use that. So buy an iPad or a Kindle and use that when you can. If you're going on a long ride in a dark bus, you cannot read without a lamp, the iPad is a good solution. If you cannot carry too many books because you're traveling for a long way, the iPad is a good solution. If you want a particular book that you don't want to order on Amazon and pay a lot of money for it to be delivered, an iPad is a good solution. So it's always good to have as a backup. So have an iPad. If you cannot afford an iPad or you don't feel a strong enough need for it, you can still read something on your phone. It's not very convenient, but I do that because that I know is always with me. So I always have my phone and I can read it in the dark. I can read in any situation, so I don't waste time. I have my phone for reading. I can use my Kindle on my phone. Now, in addition to that, you need to have physical books, especially if you don't feel so comfortable with reading from an iPad or from a Kindle. So what is a way to do that? If you can buy online and it's affordable for you, or you don't have a budget problem, great. Just buy as many books as you want. I'm an academic, I have a research budget, so I can buy a lot of books, and that's great. That's a great solution. If you cannot do that, then one of the things that I used when I was on a lower budget, for example, living in Israel, I used to spend a lot of time in used bookshops. There you will find a lot of books in English, even in countries that are not English speaking. That's a very common thing because people bring them books from abroad, and the used bookshops are full with books in English that are very affordable. They cost almost nothing. You can also go to a university where there are sometimes research libraries that are open to the public, depending on the country, depending on the situation. These libraries also have special sales sometimes, and there you will find a lot of books in English, and this will also allow you to read books that are not just literature, but also non-fiction books. And I think it's always a good idea to have some kind of a mix between fiction and non-fiction. If you are genuinely interested in a topic, a professional topic, a part of science, can be social sciences, humanities, this will keep you reading and this will keep building your vocabulary, particularly for a certain issue. Knowing the professional jargon, that's a great thing for your intellectual diet. So read non-fiction, you go to a regular bookshop, you buy in bulk, so you buy a lot of books, even if you don't plan to read them now, you keep them so you have something to read later on, or you go to a university or a professional library. If they have any sale, sometimes they have these sales in Europe in churches where they almost give away, because you have to pay a little bit, and you can get there a lot of books, both fiction and non-fiction. Surround yourself with books as much as you can. This will motivate you to read further. After you've surrounded yourself with books and you have a book that you want to read, how do you make sure that you will be reading for a longer time and that you have more, that you read more often? Here, I am a strong adherent of the idea of creating habits, and the famous book by James Clear about atomic habits is a great way to think about this problem. A great book, by the way. I recommend for everybody to read it if you want to improve yourself in any field in life. What James Clear says is the best way to improve is to make small adjustments to your habits so they become a little better, and to do it continuously so you get continuously better. So you don't have to completely reform your life. You don't have to change and have a different motivation. You don't have to have an epiphany. What you have to do is say, I'm going to change certain things in habits that I'm doing every day, sometimes several times a day, and that's going to make a difference over the long run. So when I think about reading, I think about setting habits that make reading more comfortable and allowing me to immerse myself in a book without thinking about what I'm doing. So one of the things that I do for myself is every time I'm on a train or on a metro, I read. If I have something very, very urgent to do, for example, a paper that I'm going to publish, so I can read this paper, but if I don't have something absolutely urgent, I will always be reading a book. And it's become second nature to me. The moment I sit down, or sometimes even before I sit down, I reach out for the book and I do that. So no second is wasted. And when you do that, you become a habit. And as James Clear says, human beings are creatures of habit. It becomes very easy to do. I never, after 15 minutes, kind of think about doing something else. I'm just doing that because I'm used to reading the book, and I will not shift from a behavior that is already comfortable and seems normal to me, seems regular to me. I will not change what I'm doing to something else. That's exactly like the principle of inertia. You're already doing that. so you don't stop. You're already used to the fact that the first thing you do when you sit down in the metro is to open a book, so you do it next time. You're already reading, so you don't stop reading, so you read more. And if you have a commute that is, let's say, half an hour every direction, which is less than what I have, you already have half hour plus half hour, 1 hour every day, pure netto benefit of reading. That's a lot. That's a lot where you can work with. So commute is a great way to use your reading. And remember, you're building a habit, so don't reach out for your phone and check your emails or something like that, because the moment you do that, you are making the habit less strong in your mind. Focus on reading all the time you're commuting, from the second you sit down to the second you leave a train. So that's one way that you can focus. When you're at home already, now this depends of course on the situation. If you live alone, then you have probably more private time and you need to get yourself ready to read. So organize a reading corner for you. If you want to read in bed, read in bed. If you want to read in bed with a pillow under your head when you're looking up, or if you're looking down when you're reading, find the perfect position for you and then aim to get into this position as quickly as you can. So you can say to yourself that I know exactly what is a perfect position for me for reading, and I get there. Now, one problem is if you're very, very tired, you may fall asleep if you're too comfortable. The perfect position is a position that maybe not completely comfortable, but feels also something that puts you at a certain level of alertness. If you are sleeping 8 or 9 hours a night, you shouldn't be falling asleep immediately while you're reading, and that will solve this problem as well. And then you can get yourself very, very comfortable, have a nice pillow behind your head, get into a position and read for an hour or two, and everything will be just fine. Just like I recommended to have certain times in which you write, I also recommend to have certain times in which you read. You can define to yourself at a certain hour in the day you read. So if you don't have a long commute, or if it's a day where you stay at home, you can say to yourself that between 8 and 9, I will be in bed reading, and then commit to that. And knowing that in advance, that you have exactly this hour to read, will prepare you mentally for reading that is disciplined and consistent and doesn't involve unnecessary breaks. And that's exactly what you want to reach. So building habits is very important. Habits means that you have a position to read, whether it's when you're public transportation, or when it is when you're at home, in your bed, or in an armchair, and that you are doing that consistently without interruption. Usually it helps to have a certain time frame in which you do it. This increases the chance that you stick to it and do it every day, and once you're at it, that you're going to continue throughout a longer time, so you get as much reading as possible. Now to the question of motivation. How do you motivate yourself to read more? Now let's divide this question of motivation into two elements. One is, how do you motivate yourself to keep going after your habits put you in the right position to read? And the second is, how do you reinforce your habits by being motivated to continue to read later on? When we discuss the motivation to keep on going, I want you to think about a term that was invented by the Nobel Prize laureate in economics Thomas Schelling, a term called focal points. Focal points means a number or a figure that is central, that is easy to agree on, easy to remember, and easy to commit to. So for example, if I'm going to go for a run and I'm looking at the machine and see what is the numbers on the machine, it's easier for me to agree that I'm going to run 5 kilometers than that I'm going to run 5.5, for example. The round number is something that is easy for me to commit to. There's a whole psychological mechanism inside us that makes us likely to do that. Now, when I'm going running, and I focus most of my training on powerlifting, but I still do a little bit of running, and I walk around a treadmill, I use that all the time. So I look at the calories and I say to myself, now I need to persist until I burn 300 calories, and I would look at the kilometers and I would look at the time, and all this gives me a lot of focal points. Now you can do exactly the same thing in reading. It's exactly the same. When you're reading, you have certain available cues that are focal. For example, it's much more intuitive for you to read until the end of a chapter than to read a chapter and a half. So you say, I will read until I finish the chapter. I read already for an hour. I feel a bit tired, but I want to push myself more. How do I fight against my resistance, the laziness that is trying to stop me from continuing? What I do is I will tell to myself I read to the end of a chapter. Now, books have page numbers, so you can use this to a benefit as well. What is more focal than page number 100 or 200? Or if you want to break it down, you don't have so much time, 150, 125, 110. The key is that it works a little bit like magic. You have to accustom yourself to use focal points. Every number can be focal if you convince yourself it is. It's a tool that you can use in order to improve your reading. So remember, chapters, page numbers, and the time are all methods for you to increase your ability to succeed, to read more, by setting focal points that are easy for you to execute and to strive for. Now, there is a debate between many people that are great readers about whether it is a good idea to finish every book that you read or to stop reading books if you're not interested in them. I personally read through almost all the books that I start. And the reason I do that is because I read a lot of books and I really enjoy the feeling of finishing a book, and I'm looking for this closure in a way. I think that at the time when I was reading a lot, when I was reading more than 50 books a year, I was especially adamant about this, that I would finish the books that I started, because otherwise I would just have a whole list of books that are kind of open in my head. Only when I close the book and I really kind of cut it out of a list of things that I need to do. And if I have 30 books that are somewhere in the middle, I'm not sure about them, it's very confusing. Other people are saying, if you're not interested, you will not read a lot. And therefore, if you find a book that you're not interested in, just drop it as quickly as possible and move on to something else. I think you can make for yourself a reasonable compromise between those two methods. For example, you can decide that if you already read 20% of a book, finish it. You gave yourself 2 hours or 3 hours or 4 hours or 5 hours of concentrated effort to determine if this book is good. It passed this test, then it's worthwhile to read it all the way to the end. If you are interested in being a writer, that's a very useful exercise also. So you're able to do that. So you can make a decision that suits your way of reading. If you are really enjoying the sensation of finishing a book and striking it off your list, then you are able to do that. If you are more in tune with your willingness to enjoy the book as you're reading it, then can stop books in the middle. At the same time, I would encourage you not to jump around when you're reading. So some people would skip over certain pages or whole chapters. This, I think, is not a very good idea, because then you will never get a feeling that you actually finished the book, and you will always be kind of in a confused sense of all kinds of incomplete ideas. If it works for you, and I met very intelligent people that it works for them, it keeps you reading hundreds of pages a day, go ahead. But I think for most people it's better that once you decide that you read the book and you examine it enough and you already decided to read it through, and then you know that you finished it. Now, if you are this kind of people that like to finish books and like to get the sensation of closure, I have 2 more recommendations for you that are very important. 1, make a list of every single book that you read. What I do is I usually have a Word file where I write all my tasks throughout the week, and I would write immediately when I finish the book. And then I would cut and paste from this file to another file that has a list of all the books that I read since I started. It's already more than a decade that I've been doing that. And this will keep the list of the books growing. This has a lot of benefits. It's easy afterwards to find books if you are a scholar. It gives you motivation because you see how many books you read through the year. If you are doing this list and you see that you have 20 books already in a year. You have 3 months to go to the year closes. It will motivate you to read more, and you will see reading significantly accelerated. Setting yourself goals is very useful, and this list is a really gold mine. It will really help you to motivate you to read more. Finally, I recommend to write essays about the books that you read. You can find your own framework for doing that. You can write an essay about every book that you read, or several books that are in the same topic. But once you write an essay about a book, you really own the book. It becomes your own. You remember the ideas, and this, of course, will improve your writing significantly. That's one of the tools I recommend for writing. It will also motivate you to read more, because this will enhance more and more the sense of accomplishment, the sense of closure. By writing the essay, you own the book, you become the book, and this will motivate you to read more and more and more. So if you follow these rules, if you are continuously making books available for you, they're around you, if you have habits that make it easy for you to read, if you have motivation that keeps you going longer, more as you read the book, and keep you coming back to reading more and more often, you will acquire more and more and more hours where you're building your language, you are building a set of ideas, and you become a better speaker and a better writer in English.